It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and that's right, you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. I am so delighted that you are here. We have an action-packed episode. Coming up is a segment on crypto astrologers. Yes, two fantasy worlds collide, and that's going to be great fun. We also have a really nice interview with someone we're going to call Ryan, and his story about breaking free of religion. I always love these stories, and I like to have them on from time to time. It is a fascinating concept to me. Not only am I fascinated with the idea of making money from money instead of labor, an idea that I adore, but I love when people are able to think their way out of religion, because the more I learn about religion, the stupider it seems. And maybe that's not a popular position in the United States of America, but fuck everybody else. Religion is bullshit. And if you're in it, get out. And then I have another segment that probably any advisor in their rational mind would tell me not to do. And it's called, What If Phil Gets Hit by a Truck? So it has come up a few times with clients, and I figured a lot of my clients listen to the podcast, so I would just address it with a segment here. It's my thoughts on the subject and what is in place and what might be in place in the future. But there you have it. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what the segments are. And of course, before we get into that, since this is late July of 2024, it's a week after, almost maybe, where Joe Biden has announced that he is no longer seeking to be the official presidential nominee for the Democratic Party in the United States. And the presumptive nominee at this point is Kamala Harris. The clock is ticking. There's only maybe another day or less where someone could raise their hand and say they want to run against her. I think it would be a foolish thing to do, because you would have to start from scratch, where since she was already on the ticket, has access to the money. The delegates have already spoken. She already has more than 50% of the delegates. So you'd have to win everybody that hasn't declared, and all the people that have declared have to switch. So it's just not going to happen. There are people that express concerns that the United States is not ready for a woman, not ready for a black person, not ready for an Asian person. Well, fuck all those people. I think Kamala Harris is going to do a fantastic job. And I tell you what, I don't have much other choice, to be fair. It's either Kamala, who I think will do a great job, or Trump, who I think is an evil, insidious sociopath. And the fact that this still has to be a discussion makes me very sad for the future of the United States of America, because there might be another Trump in the future, someone else who is willing to lie and cheat and steal, and even after being caught, denies it, of course, and a certain percentage, 30, 35, 40% of the population thinks he's an okay guy. So hopefully things go well and he gets, electorally speaking, crushed this fall. So a lot of political stuff going on, and I haven't got any pushback yet from listeners, but tis the season, so strap in. We're gonna talk about politics from time to time for the next several months, and probably beyond that. Also, I'm working on a segment about EVs and the ability to recycle the batteries. I had a listener express concerns about what portion of the batteries are recyclable, and I thought, I think I've read things, but didn't have it actually formalized, so I need to bone up on that and see how good or how bad that is. One of my thoughts on the subject, of course, is what percentage of oil is recycled? Zero, of course. Zero is the percentage of oil that's recycled. It is a lot of energy to pump it out of the ground. The amount of electricity that's used to pump oil out of the ground in the United States alone is enough electricity to power 3 million EVs. And every once in a while, someone will say, but don't those pump jacks just work on the oil? Don't they just burn the oil that they pull out of the ground? No, they do not. It's called crude oil for a reason. It's crude. It's really dirty. It's got a lot of stuff in it. Sure, you could burn it, but it's going to destroy a modern engine. So you could have a gasoline engine or a diesel engine theoretically running one of those pump jacks, but that means you, the landowner or whoever's renting the land, has to keep constantly going out and taking fuel to those pieces of equipment to make sure they keep running. So almost none of them do that. They're all hooked up to electricity. Of course, once you get the oil out of the ground, you've got to pump it into a tank, and then you need more electricity to pump it into a truck or a pipeline. If it's in the pipeline, you have to use electricity to move it forward and give it force to move it through the pipeline. The truck might use diesel as an energy source to get to the refinery with the oil, but of course it had to have energy spent to turn that oil into diesel. And of course, refineries use a phenomenal amount of power to they use electricity and energy to create heat, to create all the different fuels that come out of oil: kerosene, diesel, gasoline, and many other things. And I don't know that we should not be doing that, but you have to take into account all the electricity used in the refining process. And once refined, all the different things that are created have to be pumped into different tanks. And then from those tanks pumped into either new pipelines or most likely trucks that then use a portion of that fuel to drive to a gas station. And usually the gasoline or diesel can fall from the truck into the tanks under the gas station, but you need electricity to, again, pump the fuel into the vehicle at a gas or diesel station. So there is more electricity and more waste in the process of getting oil to market and make it gasoline, where you can easily put it in your car. The amount of electricity that is used is more than it would take for every single car in the United States of America to drive on electricity today. So when people say, can the grid handle it? There might be places where there's not enough electricity at the right time in the right place. No doubt about it. There's going to need to be some changes. But the amount of electricity we currently make as a country is sufficient today to run every car on electricity. Keeping in mind, every year as Americans, we use more and more electricity per person. I don't hear conservatives complaining about our giant TVs, about us using electricity. They don't complain about the electricity used for stadiums. They generally don't complain about the electricity used for cryptocurrencies, which is a problem. There's a lot of ways we use electricity or other sources of energy like gasoline and diesel. When someone drives a giant SUV or a giant pickup truck when they don't need it, they don't seem to be generally concerned about the amount of energy they're wasting. But when you use a highly efficient electric car, they are. Another fact is that people are adding solar panels to their property. Not everybody can do this, of course, to be fair. But the amount of solar panel installation every year is currently producing electricity at a level of 2 times the amount of EVs that are added to the grid every year. So a lot of people, they're the same people that are adding solar panels like I've done and an electric car. So in net, someone like me, I'm using less electricity from the grid. I'm actually helping out the grid. And of course, a lot of future electric cars are going to have what's called bi-directional charging, where you can hook up the giant battery in your car to power your house when the power grid goes down. These batteries would act just like a power wall or other battery systems that you could connect to your solar panel system so that you can just keep rocking electricity in your house as if the grid was still up and running, at least for days and days. All right, I didn't want to go too on to that, so we're going to take a little break. We're going to hear about crypto astrologers. We're going to learn what will happen, what could happen if Phil gets hit by a truck, and an interview with Ryan and his, what do they call it? Deconversion, his escape, his breaking free from religion. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, two great tastes that taste great together. I think that works for chocolate and peanut butter and maybe many other things. But in this case, it's a combination of cryptocurrency and astrology. Yes, that's right. We have crypto astrologers who will use the stars and the heavens and the planets and moon phases to figure out when you should buy cryptocurrency. Of course, before I even get into this, I have to be absolutely clear in case there's any confusion. Both astrology and cryptocurrencies are bullshit. Do not put any value in either one of them. This is just for comic relief because I find it fucking hysterical and I wanted to share it with you. I'm looking at an article sent to me by one of the show listeners. It's on Wired, the magazine website, wired.com. The title of the article, Crypto Astrologers See Price Moves in the Charts. Subheading, they predict the ups and downs of Bitcoin based on planetary movements, and their super secretive clientele listens. Yeah, super secretive clientele. Clientele is secretive? It's secret clientele, not secretive. Anyway, it's just for fun. It's just painfully stupid, and this is the kind of stuff that makes me weep for the future. It starts off quoting one of these crypto astrologers saying, astrology is the measurement of time. No, it's not. Astrology is bullshit, first of all, and it has nothing to do with measurements of time. Anyway, this astrologer goes on, I've been at this for a long time, and I have a particular technical analysis system that I've been developing for many years. One of my little taglines is technicals and timing for the win. Okay, cool. It can't work. It won't work. Oh, it's just crazy. Of course, they have all kinds of claims of who they've worked for, but they can't provide any names for privacy reasons. All right, fair enough. But then why all the name dropping when you can't drop names? Here's another astrologer saying, some of the traditional theories work quite well, but some of them don't. Or markets have their own expression of the root energies, transcendental manifestations of each sign's archetype. I'm sorry, I couldn't read it straight to face. Absolutely nuts. Here's more traditional astrologers associate waxing moons with growth and waning moons with dwindling down energy. But in a thread on X, this guy analyzed the average percent returns of Bitcoin over a 15-minute time frame in all markets from April 2020 to present and discovered the waning phase of the moon cycle correlates with a 350% better average performance than during the waxing phase. Okay, so you look at a whole bunch of stuff and you found a correlation. Yay, you. Let's see, I thought I had one other one that I thought was hysterical, but it's complete garbage. Oh, here's something that was said by one of the astrologers. Each edition of this newsletter begins with a due diligence disclaimer to clarify that he is not a financial advisor and his work is based on probability. No, it's not. No, it's not. There's a cute little chart that shows Bitcoin price going up and down. And then they have, what is this? Saturn enters Capricorn. Saturn conjunction Bitcoin with Mars. Saturn at Bitcoin, Mars, Sun midpoint. Okay, whatever. They're just using weird things. Here's another one. Even if my own personal trades are doing well, if a client is having a Saturn transit, it has just entered their house where their Venus is, and how loud of an energy that is for the individual, they're not okay, she says. The feedback is not good, but there's an understanding that's how you grow as a financial astrologer. Oh, I won't torture you anymore. Complete fiction, complete fantasy. The sentences don't make sense. There's words in these quotes. There's definitely words. Lots of words, fancy words, meaningless words. But it exists. It's out there. Some people believe in astrology, in astrologers. Some people think cryptocurrency is a reasonable thing to put your money into. Not me. I'm out on both causes, but a listener correctly thought I would find this amusing, and I did find it amusing, so I shared it with you. So hopefully you find it amusing.
Section 5. Was Jehovah a God of love? Did these words come from the heart of love? When the Lord thy God shall drive them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, or show mercy unto them. I will heap mischief upon them. I will send mine arrows upon them. They shall be burned with hunger, and devoured with burning heat, and with bitter destruction. I will send the tooth of beasts upon them, with the poison of serpents of the dust. The sword without and terror within shall destroy both the young man and the virgin, the suckling also with the man of grey hairs. Let his children be fatherless, and his wife a widow. Let his children be continually vagabonds, and beg. Let them seek their bread also out of their desolate places. Let the extortioner catch all that he hath, and let the stranger spoil his labor. Let there be none to extend mercy unto him, neither let there be any to favor his fatherless children. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and daughters. And the heaven that is over thee shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. I will make my arrows drunk with blood. I will laugh at their calamity. Did these curses, these threats, come from the heart of love, or from the mouth of savagery? Was Jehovah God or devil? Why should we place Jehovah above all the gods? Has man in his ignorance and fear ever imagined a greater monster? Have the barbarians of any land in any time worshipped a more heartless god? Brahma was 1,000 times nobler, and so was Osiris and Zeus and Jupiter. So was the supreme god of the Aztecs, to whom they offered only the perfume of flowers. The worst god of the Hindus, with his necklace of skulls and his bracelets of living snakes, was kind and merciful compared with Jehovah. Compared with Marcus Aurelius, how small Jehovah seems. Compared with Abraham Lincoln, how cruel, how contemptible is this God.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Welcome back, everybody. And as promised, as teased earlier in the show, I now have a special guest who's going to talk about his journey out of religion. And his name is Ryan. And we're just going to go with Ryan today. Nothing fancy. Ryan, how are you today?
Hey, I'm good, Phil. How are you?
I'm good. It seems like in the, in the ether, these aren't really called deconversion stories now. They're called deconstruction. Which do you prefer, or do you give a shit?
I really and truly, I don't give a shit.
Okay, I can work with that. And so before we get into where you are now, if you wouldn't mind, give us a little background. Where did you grow up? How did you first get into religion? Was it just a family thing? Is it because of the culture? Talk to me.
Yeah, I definitely grew up with it. It's a long and winding road to get through my religious experiences.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the redacted version as much as I can to not bore you to death. Born and raised in the hands in your pockets Baptist church. Very, very stuffy, very...
So the hands in the pocket, is that the audience or is that the minister? Both?
It's how I always refer to the audience.
Oh, okay.
They were just very, very stuffy.
So they weren't doing hand raising.
I ended up landing Pentecostal, which is hands everywhere else.
Okay. Excellent. I just want to, minister could be putting his hands in your pocket to take money or do other things that ministers do. But go on.
There was some of that going on, I'm sure.
Yeah. You were in a calm, kind of quiet, reserved church.
Yes.
Excellent.
Not the stuff we see on TV. We were very boring.
Yeah. And so that was childhood, and you took it seriously. You just were kind of there because your parents made you. How'd that play out?
I was all in. As I grew up, I was the kid, probably 10 years old, going to the pastor with questions, and we're discussing the finer points of Revelation kind of stuff.
Or you thought as a 10-year-old?
Well, I thought it felt pretty fine at the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But as time went, we can fast forward all the way to age 16. Very involved in the youth group and all of that. Ended up scoring myself a testicular cancer diagnosis.
Well, that's different.
It's, you can only do it twice.
Yeah.
But, so that led me down the road that most Christians think I'm on still, is that angry at God phase. So I'm 16 years old, and I wasn't questioning the existence of God. I was questioning my willingness to participate.
And at this point, were you already Pentecostal, or did that come later?
No, still a different Baptist church at this point, but still pretty conservative.
Okay.
Did the whole mad at God thing for a while. Might be fairly typical high school drug use story. Shortly after that, just after high school, I'll spare you all of it. Yeah. The conversion story is the stuff I would tell in church, but long story short, I rededicated my life to God.
Okay.
At about age 18, the fall after graduation.
Yeah. And it's amazing how at 18 things seem so profound and serious that you look back later and go, I was just 18 fucking around. But you got serious, you rededicated. Were you born again? Or
born again. I like that.
Yeah.
So from there, ended up landing myself in a Pentecostal situation.
Yeah.
I won't get lost in it, but anywhere from Assembly of God to Foursquare to Pentecostal Church of God, they're all distinctions without a difference.
Yeah.
Geez. There's so many details still. I don't want to get lost and just
it's all
make
good.
it crazy.
So were you just a regular member? Did you go to groups? Did you bring people in? Were you on fire for the Lord? What would you say?
I would say on fire was where I considered myself. I was all in. After my rededication, my adult faith I was all the way in. Biblical literalist, 6,000-year-old Earth. You know, watching the Kent Hovind videos.
Oh, I was going to
God,
say,
that guy
did evolution
was
come in
genius.
there? Yeah.
So intelligent, so wise. Just learned so much from him.
Yeah.
And it, you know, ended up never did the seminary thing. The churches I was a part of did almost like a remote learning before remote learning was cool. Correspondence courses to become a licensed minister. So
And did
went
you
through
complete
all of that.
Okay, you completed that. Did you become a minister?
In the sense of at the pulpit every Sunday morning leading the flock, no, I never held a church.
Okay. But you got a degree. You got sermonized. I don't. What do we call that?
They hung paper on me.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's fast forward all the way to the end. I was still in the pulpit. Pastor was out of town, whatever. And I was teaching the adult Sunday school class. And I was getting to the point. It was a different church, so I was working on a different minister's license at this point for a different denomination.
Yeah.
And one of the books I had to go through was effectively everything you need to know about the Bible.
Okay.
It was a very, very historic type look. Where it came from, what it means to us as Christians kind of thing.
Right.
And I figured, I'm teaching the adult Sunday school class. I've got a lot of people in here 60, 70, 80 years old that have been in church longer than I've been alive. So let's bring something a little different. We can get into some of this stuff. So I'm going through and I'm really drilling down on this where the Bible came from.
Uh-oh.
And yeah, you know where this is going.
I've heard the stories.
Yeah, and we're getting into just a lot of the nuances, like Council of Nicaea, I believe, when they voted on what was canon, what wasn't.
Right.
You fast forward to like Martin Luther didn't think that the book of James should be in the Bible because, it's all about works, and that was too Catholic for his taste. And just, I'm sitting there and I'm like, this doesn't work. In my mind, and this is one of those odd ones. This is kind of still how I view Christianity. God was everything, all powerful, all knowing. You would think he would do a better job of writing a book.
Well, one would think that, and I just want to make sure that I understood the story correctly. You were already, from time to time, helping out. You're at the pulpit. You're a minister. You're papered. You're certified. You're official. But yet there was still basic things about the history of the religion and the Bible that you just never came across. Is that it was news to you? That
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because
God settled it, and that, or God said it, and that settles it.
Yeah. So the these classes, the program you went through, what was it that you did learn? If it wasn't about the history of the religion, just like how to say things, how to give a blessing, how to birth a child. I mean, what?
There was so many different things that, God, it's been a while. But there was a book on homiletics and preaching and some of that. There was, books on youth ministry, books on adult ministry, but a lot of them I never got to because I'm like, history of the Bible seemed fascinating. It was one of the earlier ones I tackled.
Right.
And I'm standing there on Sunday morning trying to teach the history of the Bible, to a bunch of believers, and I'm just, this internal monologue is kicking off, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, because this is your job, right? I mean, you're paying your bills by doing this stuff?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
That was always the plan, I guess.
Yeah.
It never came together, but to use the parlance, I always felt the call of God on my life.
Okay.
We were going somewhere, and this was.
Yeah.
And it made sense because, as that biblical literalist, this is always one of those that it still irritates me with religion. Like, if the all-powerful God is acting on your behalf, then what the fuck are you doing worrying about
anything?
This stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Anything. Why are we sad at funerals? Why are we worried about anything?
Yeah. I always wondered why did people pray? Because if God has a plan, are you suggesting that you can coax him into changing it? I mean,
right.
What's the point of prayer? So you were struggling, and did you stay in the ministry and struggle? Did you?
For a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I started to ask some questions. I started to get into some conversations with some people. The pastor, he knew there was something going on, and call it a mutual breakup. We kind of agreed that maybe I shouldn't be teaching the adult Sunday school class right now.
And it's funny. I wondered, did he see the signs because he's experienced them?
Yeah.
Or not?
It's so hard to say.
Yeah.
But we definitely had a falling out. We, like with so many of these people who I thought would be my friends forever, literally, we were having that conversation and going over some of that Bible history, the beliefs about the Bible. And I'm like, if I'm an all-powerful God and I have, you can save yourself from hell with one simple trick, I'm going to make that pretty fucking clear.
That sounds like an excellent strategy.
If God is all loving, if he loves you, he doesn't want you to go to hell. If God is all knowing, he knows exactly what it's going to take to convince me, to convince you, to convince anybody. He's got all the toys.
Yeah.
I mean, he can heal the blind, raise the dead, all this stuff, but he can't write a book. So that was where I started to question, and the pastor kind of said, if you're going to talk like this, we're not going to talk anymore. And I'm like, I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yeah. And of course, that would have been a great opportunity for him to say, oh, I see where you're confused or misunderstood. I'll explain it to you. But,
right.
But that apparently wasn't the path he chose. He chose, you just need to go because this is my gravy train and I don't need you talking people out of coming to church.
It does make you wonder. I'd never thought about that, but it makes you wonder if he was having or had some of those same questions.
Well, I know that at one point, many years ago, I had pretended to be a member of a church. Well, I was a member of a church. I pretended to believe in what they believed in. I don't want to sidetrack your story, but at some point I left, and then a couple years later, out of the blue, the minister contacted me and kind of was like, what would it take for you to come back? And, I gave him a list of stuff that he kind of figured that was never going to happen. But asked if I'd come back anyway. And I said, I would be happy to come back. And what I'd like to do just one Sunday, I get to talk and explain my perspective to everyone in the adult Sunday school. And he made it perfectly clear that was never going to fucking happen. And
sure.
I was thinking, well, why not? And boom, communication was over. And I wondered, because, I can't know inside of someone's head. Was he worried about their eternal souls and their damnation? Or was he thinking, no, this church is barely getting by. I don't need you to spook 10% of the membership and take their money away. But but I don't know. So
well, the folks that show up to adult Sunday school class, they're the ones that tithe.
Yeah, they're serious. They make the effort. It's the men's club and the auxiliary and all these different things. So you left that congregation. Did you go to another? Did you just get on with your life? Did you keep studying?
No, there was a lot of studying still going on. I was talking to, there's just so much of it that makes me laugh now that, maybe shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I was talking to somebody and was kind of telling her where I was at. She was a good Catholic lady, and I'm really having some questions. I'm struggling with my faith. Some of this stuff's not making sense. And she was so sweet. And she says to me, I think you'll figure it out. It's not like you're going to become an atheist. And I can hear the words just ringing in my head because I don't even know where I was at the time. I think part of me, she gave word to it. And I think I knew that as far as my life in church, I was done.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be done.
Right.
This wasn't me wanting to get out and sin. And one of the last straws was doing my Bible study, and I'm like, I'm really struggling to make sense of all this stuff. The more critically you look at it, the more it falls apart. I know you've heard that one 1,000 times. Indeed. Too.
Yeah, I was there once myself, but a long time ago.
Right. So I decided that what would be really helpful to me was if I could get a harmonic gospel. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John pulled together into a single narrative.
Uh-oh. Yeah, you're fucked now. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't get through the genealogies.
Now, is there such a thing as a harmony gospel that you bought, or were you just looking with the 4 books and trying to?
I was toying with the idea of writing something for myself.
Yeah.
I think there might be one that exists, but it's out of print.
Yeah.
But yeah, it fell apart, and then I found myself. That was that weird limbo stage.
Right.
Because I knew I'd done the whole angry at God thing, and despite all of my rebellion and unbelief in high school, came crawling back. And now here I am, 35 years old, and really having some serious questions. And I knew it was all bullshit. But there was this part of me that was just terrified that I was just mad at God. I was just in rebellion again, kind of thing.
Right.
And that I didn't want to get sucked back in again. And probably the funniest thing for me, when I look at it now, I was just frozen. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I live in super rural America, so I've got, my entire community decided I'm an apostate, so I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I get into podcasts, and one of the first ones that pops up is Seth Andrews, the Thinking Atheist. And I'm like, I can't listen to this guy. I'm looking at this podcast, and I'm like, his arguments against God are going to be so paper thin. I know that I'm going to pick apart whatever he says, and I'm going to end up back in church. So I held off, and I looked at it, and then finally I was like, I got to do this. I have to move on. I have to figure it out. So I start listening, and I'm just, choirs of angels, and I'm like, holy shit, it is all bullshit.
Yeah.
And you realize how how much those apologetic arguments that you had just don't hold water. They can't stand up to any scrutiny.
The way I describe them is apologetic arguments don't need to be good. They need to be good enough.
Right.
So that if you're already predisposed to believe it, you hear it and you go, yeah, that works for me. But when you actually sit down with them, it reminded me a few months ago, I met someone who was in their mid to late 20s and had left religion only a few years earlier, and they were all excited about these arguments and stuff, and I wasn't sharing the excitement, and they were asking me why, and I said, I've been doing those kinds of arguments longer than you've been alive. So I decided I was an atheist at 13, and I'm not 13 anymore. But it was kind of a surprising thing for me to even think about that I had been arguing about or against religion longer than this person had been alive, and and they were pushing 30. It's just like, wow. So that's why it's good to have more people come along that find their way out and find these arguments and learn what to talk about them. And so you kind of you call yourself an atheist now? Or are you still not cool with the word? Where are you at?
No, I'm good with atheist.
Okay.
I'm kind of, I don't even know where I'm at. Talk about being an out and out atheist.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking to you on a first name basis.
Well, maybe at some point you can adopt my moniker, maybe, if you feel like it's right. I tell people I'm an evangelical atheist.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's funny that you say that, because I don't want to get lost into a whole thing on therapy, but do therapy. Therapy's amazing. Because they see it from a third perspective.
Right.
But I was talking to my therapist about it and kind of realized, like, so much of that ministry, I wanted to be involved. I wanted to be helping people.
Yeah.
And I'm still that person. I'm still, I still get excited talking about stuff. I'm still very passionate, but rather than talk you into church, I'd love to talk you out of it.
Right. Now, you mentioned small town America, which we're not going to get too specific. This whole process, leaving church, not being in church, did that at some point cost friends, family, relationships? How'd that play out?
It cost almost all of my friends. I had pastors anywhere from, we're not going to talk anymore, to another friend who was kind of in the same ministerial position as me just said, you're just being a jackass.
Wow.
That
doesn't sound
accusing
friendly.
me of all kinds of things.
Yeah.
You just want to sin. That's the best. But so many people. And yeah, there's that point where I don't know where I want to go with it anymore,
right.
Because
and you don't have to. You could just say there's no good arguments and I'm going to go play Frisbee golf now because that's what you want to do. But I feel you.
Yeah. I still feel that call on my life, Phil.
Yeah, to do something to be meaningful.
But I'm in neutral. I have been in neutral for probably 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And I can make all the excuses. There's the fear of the small town, which is real, and 80% Trump voters in my quaint little community.
Lovely.
It's very orange out here.
Not red anymore. It's orange.
But I'm stuck there. I feel there's people that know where I stand, absolutely, but I feel very restrained, and there's the fear, the anxiety of what's going to happen.
Right.
Surely I'm not going to get fired because I'm an atheist, but fuck, other people have.
I was going to say, it does happen.
Yeah, it does. And, I know who I work for, and I know how that goes. So I don't feel real comfortable just coming out with it. But yeah,
that's where you are.
I don't know.
It's all good. If you could wave a magic wand and go back to being a believer, would you do it, or are you good being out? It's like, do you want the red pill or the blue pill?
That's definitely the question I've toyed with. I mean, obviously, I want to believe true things. I don't want to be tied into the system and just be, another cog in the machine or whatever.
Right.
But God, it was so much easier.
It probably was easier because you had a whole basket of things to think, feel, and believe. Have you thought about, or have you gone to any of the national conferences like American Atheists or Freedom from Religion Foundation?
I have not yet. I've got one on my radar.
Yeah.
Because I think that sense of community is, that's what I lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a big thing. So,
well, if you ever want, I don't know if you do Facebook, and that's okay, but if you decide you're more open and available on Facebook as an example, if you're on there, let me know, and I can do a post calling for people to go friend you, and you could get several hundreds of people who want to be friends with you, and some of them are really nice, some of them aren't. They're humans, right?
Right.
But it would be a community thing where you would have someone where you could put up a comical religious meme and have people join you and champion you. That champion. Oh my God. Because I know it's one of those things that if you have a very conservative list of friends, if you post something anti-religious, you quickly learn that that's not very helpful for yourself. But if you have 500 friends who are with you, I have friends and family and relatives that really, really loathe some of the shit that I put up, but they know to never say anything on my wall because they will get eviscerated because they're the crazy ones. I don't know. It doesn't happen that often anymore, but it's kind of nice to know there's 500 people that got your back. So
yeah,
that's kind of a fun thing. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
I don't know, man.
Okay. That's all right.
I think that's the short of it.
Yeah. Well, if anything happens or changes, or if you have my email, obviously, because we talked there. If you do go to a conference, if it's one that I'm going to, we can say hello. I can get you a coffee, or we can sit and chat in person. Maybe I can introduce you to some people, whatever you like. But I want to thank again everyone. This is Ryan, and maybe at some point in the future you'll have a last name. But you go, you do you when you're ready. And I do appreciate you spending time to talk to me and share your adventure with my listeners.
Yeah, of course. As soon as I have something to promote, I will let you know. But as of right now, we're just sticking our toe in the water and seeing how this feels. And I got to say, it's pretty fucking great.
Great. Well, Ryan, thank you for being on the Phil Ferguson Show.
Yeah, thanks, Phil.
Jesus is here!
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. This segment is called What If Phil Gets Hit by a Truck? There you go. Kind of odd. Didn't expect it, did you? It is a weird thing. When I talk to so many people, there's things that come up in little patterns where Every once in a while, someone asks one question and then no one else does. But sometimes people ask the same question all clustered around the same period of time. And this is the inspiration for this segment because I've had multiple clients ask, "Hey, Phil, what happens if you get hit by a truck?" And it's odd. And I wonder, do they think that I'm older than I think that I am? Do I sound older or feebled? I don't know. Maybe it is just this pending doom of a possible Trump victory that's rattling around in people's heads, uncertainty about the future. So the first thought that I have is that I intend to be doing this for many, many years. So there's that. The next thing is that if I do get hit by a truck and I'm gone, the first thing that you'll notice is that I won't answer phone calls or I won't answer emails. And the next thing you might notice is that the bill doesn't come unless I'm really good. But there is a soft plan. I have a cousin whose last name, not ironically, because he's family, his last name is Ferguson also, and he is in the investment business, and he runs a registered investment advisor company, just like I do. And he and I have talked, and he is part of, I don't know what else to call it, an aggregator. I think I've mentioned this before, where because of the increasing complexity and regulatory problems and challenges and difficulties for individual independent registered investment advisors like my company, Polaris, a lot of investment advisors are joining with other companies, and those companies can offer a wide range of services. And one of them is that they will help you sell your business and or help you buy a business. So he and I have talked about it. It's nothing in writing. I don't want to oversell it, but my wife knows that if something happens to me, poof, as soon as she has taken care of herself personally, she calls my cousin, who she knows, and says, "This has happened. What do we need to do?" And with his help and knowledge and the company that he works for, he or one of the other companies in his collective, his co-op, whatever, would probably buy Polaris. Him most likely, but maybe somebody else. Like I said, this is not in writing, but that's probably how it would go down at this point in time. And what the person who buys it, assuming it's my cousin or someone else, they would then start calling and informing everybody that this has happened and that Phil's wife has sold the company and they're taking over. My expectation, particularly if it is my cousin, is that they'll keep doing the same kind of thing that I'm doing. However, if they start pitching you annuities and life insurance and long-term care insurance and a whole bunch of stuff that I talk about and that I think is a ripoff, you are free to tell them to fuck off. It won't bother me because I'm dead. You could, of course, say no, and that you would just want to stick with index funds and being reasonably rational and smart business people who want to collect the fees and or have happy clients. They will most likely work with you. They might even just want to do it that way to start with anyway. But I did want you to know there is that, I'm going to call it a soft plan, and that my wife and or kids and or estate would probably get more money if you stayed. So if it works for you, that'd be great for them. Like I said, I'd be dead. But I want to go on record saying that if they want to sell you bullshit and you simply telling them that you want to stick with index funds doesn't work for them, then move your money. Like I said, I'll be dead. Move your money. I am considering working with one of these aggregators myself. They provide different levels of service for different organizations. As an example, I could have a signed contract that if something were to happen, they would automatically take over the business and pay X dollars to my estate, or a percentage or a factor of some kind based on business revenue or profits. so that the family gets money from selling the business and they would take over. There are different levels of integration that an independent advisor can have or utilize with one of these aggregators. So they could be there as a formal backstop in case Phil does get hit by a truck, where poof, the wheels just start turning automatically, and it would be a formal agreement, a written contract, a signed contract, and those things would happen. They also sometimes provide services like backroom services, where maybe if I'm away, they can answer the phone and say, Phil is out of the office for this week and he'll call you back as soon as he can. Or if you really need to talk to him, let us know. We have a way to contact him. Who knows? Maybe that's a thing. Another thing that they might do is do the billing for me. My billing process is pretty darn efficient, but it would be nice to not have to be in my office on a specific day, and then they would just automatically create the invoices and send them out. That would save me some time and labor. Another thing that they could do is they could do almost all of the regulatory and compliance and manuals, like policies, procedures manuals, and then I would just have to follow their rules, but that would increase the likelihood that I'm following all of the rules correctly. It would not eliminate me from being audited by the SEC, but the SEC might start with them, and I would only have to pull up specific documents to support transactions, history, validate and clients and things like that. So I don't know. I don't know what level of stuff that I might want help with. Of course, anything that they do to help you, they're not in the business of charity. They're going to want to get a cut. My commitment to you would be that if I have to pay 5 or 10 or 20% of my revenue for these services, I will be eating that. I will not be charging you extra. Recently, I talked about going to a free steak dinner, which was quite lovely, by the way, where I heard a presentation from a different investment advisor, a different registered investment advisor company, and the investment advisor representative. And I got to see a lot of details about how he runs his business. And so my fee is 1% or less for larger accounts. His was, from memory, I think 1.25 or less for larger accounts. So a good 25% higher to start, at least, than mine. And he also had a much higher floor where people that maybe didn't have $1 million, they could still hire him, but they were going to have to pay a minimum flat amount that was pretty high. And so that even negates the 1.25%. But on top of the 1.25, whatever money manager he used, they might charge 0.1 or 10% to 20% of the portfolio to manage it. And that's in addition, I think it was all the way up to 0.4 or 0.04. No, 0.4, 4%, not 40 basis points, 0.4%. So if you're paying him 1.25 plus another 0.4, you're paying 1.65. I do all of that shit in-house by myself. And as I've hinted to in a previous episodes, I am currently going through all the clients one by one manually and updating my plan. I'll tell you about that when it's pretty much done for all the clients. Some clients with really small accounts, it won't make sense. And I'll explain that when I explain that. But it's a lot of time and it's a lot of effort. But I think, for my opinion, it's much better than an automated thing where I just click a button and money moves from one position to another position. There's a lot of little details that make each person different. And I hope that's one of the value adds that Phil has, that Polaris has, is that I'm small, not that small. For an individual person, it's quite big, but I'm small as a registered investment advisor. And I have few enough clients that I can talk to them all and know all of them, at least somewhat. I don't want to oversell, they're all my best friends, because there's 130 clients. So but I know most of them pretty well and what their needs are. And sometimes you can make an adjustment in a portfolio, and it's easy to do because it's in an IRA. No big deal. I buy a few things, I sell a few things, easy peasy. However, it gets to be a little harder in a taxable account. But I don't want to get into that because that's going to be another segment on long-term capital gains tax, which probably will be in this episode. Anywho, so that's the wrap up of what happens if Phil gets hit by a truck. If you want more details, call, let me know. And this is probably one of those many things about the business or the sausage, the making or running of a business that most advisors or brokers would tell me to not share with people. But people have questions. I have thoughts. I share my thoughts. I answer questions. If you want more, email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com, and we can talk about it.
Section 6, Jehovah's Administration. He created the world, the hosts of heaven, a man and woman, placed them in a garden. Then the serpent deceived them, and they were cast out and made to earn their bread. Jehovah had been thwarted. Then he tried again. He went on for about 1,600 years trying to civilize the people. No schools, no churches, no Bible, no tracts, nobody taught to read or write, no 10 Commandments. The people grew worse and worse until the merciful Jehovah sent the flood and drowned all the people except Noah and his family, 8 in all. Well, then he started again and changed their diet. At first, Adam and Eve were vegetarians. After the flood, Jehovah said, "Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, snakes and buzzards." Then he failed again, and at the Tower of Babel he dispersed and scattered the people. Finding that he could not succeed with all the people, he thought he would try a few. So he selected Abraham and his descendants. Again he failed, and his chosen people were captured by the Egyptians and enslaved for 400 years. Then he tried again, rescued them from Pharaoh, and started for Palestine. Then he changed their diet, allowing them to eat only the beasts that parted the hoof and chewed the cud. Again he failed. The people hated him and preferred the slavery of Egypt to the freedom of Jehovah. So he kept them wandering until nearly all who came from Egypt had died. Then he tried again, took them into Palestine, and had them governed by judges. This too was a failure. No schools, no Bible. Then he tried kings, and the kings were mostly idolaters. Then the chosen people were conquered and carried into captivity by the Babylonians. Another failure. Then they returned, and Jehovah tried prophets, howlers, and wailers. But the people grew worse and worse. No schools, no sciences, no arts, no commerce. Then Jehovah took upon himself flesh, was born of a woman, and lived among the people that he had been trying to civilize for several thousand years. Then these people, following the law that Jehovah had given them in the wilderness, charged this Jehovah man, this Christ, with blasphemy, tried, convicted, and killed him. Jehovah had failed again. Then he deserted the Jews and turned his attention to the rest of the world. And now the Jews, deserted by Jehovah, persecuted by Christians, are the most prosperous people on the earth. Again has Jehovah failed. What an administration.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Thank you again for listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. I am delighted you are here. Sometimes the segments that I do are as suggestions or they're questions from show listeners. So if you have an idea or a question, you can send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. I probably can't use everything that gets sent to me, but it does help me come up with ideas. And it's something that I know at least one person wants to hear the answer to, that specific question. But if you're asking it, probably other people are thinking it. So hopefully you enjoyed the segments today. One more thing I want to wrap back around to, like I talked about in the beginning, politics. Kamala Harris, of course, is now most likely the presumptive, I will call it a presumptive presidential candidate nominee for the Democratic Party. That will be official in days, maybe by the time you listen to this episode. But of course, the Russian bots and the Chinese bots, or whoever's behind, are making these terrible, hideous, just hateful memes. Does it come from a Russian bot, or does it come from an ignorant American? I don't know. How can one tell? My Facebook page for the podcast, The Phil Ferguson Show, which, by the way, you can go sign up, like, whatever, that page, and see some stuff that I post there and have discussions. That is a much more open Facebook page than my personal page. The personal page, I just don't have the strength to talk to some of these idiots. So people get blocked and banned pretty quickly on my personal page. The show page, a little more room for argument and discussion with sometimes, I don't know, people that just don't seem to understand how the world works at all. One of those memes that has come up with Kamala is they are calling her a DEI hire. That basically means that diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's what DEI stands for. I think that's what it stands for. What they're basically saying is she is hired for the job as vice president and now as president for the purpose of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I think clearly means that they're saying she has no skills. She does not have the skill set. She's not qualified for the job. So when someone is I have my air quotes up, a DEI hire, end quote, that's basically a way of saying they're not qualified. They were picked for their job because of some other factor. For example, she's a woman. She's a black woman. She's African American. She is Asian, I think, is also in her family heritage. And that discounts everything that she's done. Would she be my top choice if we had all the time in the world? Maybe not. She'd be on the list, though. She's good. She's got skills. And I can only hope that Donald Trump stops being a coward and actually debates her, because he's canceled the next debate. So I am looking forward to her just going out and doing the kind of bold confrontation with Trump that Biden was too nice to do. I guess that's the way to put it. She's currently working on her VIP pick. Anyway, I'm losing focus. The DEI hire thing, she has been in politics for decades. She is an attorney. She was a prosecutor. She's worked very hard to get to where she is. And of course, yes, many other people have worked very hard to get to where they are. But those people apparently don't get labeled as a DEI hire. So I can only assume, and this is the stance that I'm taking on Facebook, my personal Facebook page, and the Phil Ferguson Show page. If you use that phrase, if you share a meme or you talk about that meme that Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, I am going to take the position that you are a racist and or a misogynist. You can be both. That's why I have the and or. Thank you for the person that made that suggestion for my previous language. And there will not be a discussion. You will not have the opportunity to explain yourself. You're fucking out. If you're so bold and confident in your racism and your misogyny that you think that's a reasonable thing to share, I don't want to be associated with you in any way. I will not let those posts stay. I will not let you stay. You're fucking out. Another fun thing you can do if you have, a more open page, because some people treat Facebook very differently, where they might have 40, 50, 100 people that they know, and they know each one of those people. But if you have more of an open page, sometimes you get people that are wink, wink, nudge, nudge, your friends, air quotes. Maybe you met them once. Maybe they're a friend of a friend. Maybe they asked to be your friend and you said, why not? I like to have the discussions. I like to have the disagreements. But so often I see people putting up these Trump memes or now the anti-Kamala memes. And when I go to their Facebook page, it turns out that either they're brand new and have never put up anything about what their favorite movie is. They don't have family, don't have friends, they don't have pictures at the beach or on a vacation, or they are just wizards at controlling their profile's exposure to people who aren't friends or family. I don't know which is which, but I think a lot of them that post this crazy stuff, they're just bots. Who's running it? I don't know. The purpose of it, I'm not sure, to sow dissent, but be very careful when you see this stuff and or share stuff. I saw a Republican friend recently share a meme about how unsafe it is to do mail-in ballots. And of course, that's factually wrong. Although I was like, go on, keep sharing that amongst yourselves, you conservative, Trump-loving people. Convince each other it's a bad idea to do mail-in voting. Now, some of those people will show up in person, but some people will be on vacation, will be traveling, won't be home, forget about it, whatever. So if you have the ability to, consider contacting your local official electoral poll voting office for your county, city, state, whatever you have to do, and get your mail-in ballot if you're not going to be around. Even get your mail-in ballot if you are going to be around, because you can study the people's names and vote at your time, your pace, your leisure, and leave more room for other people to be able to vote in person so that no one's left unaccounted for. Anywho, that's it for now. Wrapping up the show. The next thing I'm going to be at, I think next month in August, is BajaCon in Canada, just north of the border outside of Detroit. Hope to see you there. I will be at FFRF conference later this year and the CSI Con, Center for Skeptical Inquiry. See, that's why I don't like their naming nomenclature stuff. Anywho, I will be at those conferences as well, and I do hope to see you sometime soon. Until then, ciao.
Section 7. The New Testament. Who wrote the New Testament? Christian scholars admit they do not know. They admit that if the four Gospels were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they must have been written in Hebrew. And yet a Hebrew manuscript of any one of these Gospels has never been found. All have been and are in Greek. So, educated theologians admit that the epistles, James and Jude, were written by persons who had never seen one of the four Gospels. In these epistles, in James and Jude, no reference is made to any of the Gospels, nor to any miracle recorded in them. The first mention that has been found of one of our Gospels was made about 108 years after the birth of Christ, and the four Gospels were first named and quoted from at the beginning of the 3rd century, about 170 years after the death of Christ. We now know that there were many other Gospels besides our four, some of which have been lost. There were the Gospels of Paul, of the Egyptians, of the Hebrews, of perfection, of Judas, of Thaddeus, of the infancy, of Thomas, of Mary, of Andrew, of Nicodemus, of Marcion, and several others. So there were the Acts of Pilate, of Andrew, of Mary, of Paul, and Thecla, and of many others. Also a book called The Shepherd of Hermas. At first, not one of all the books was considered as inspired. The Old Testament was regarded as divine, but the books that now constitute the New Testament were regarded as human productions. We now know that we do not know who wrote the four Gospels. The question is, were the authors of these four Gospels inspired? If they were inspired, then the four Gospels must be true. If they're true, they must agree. The four Gospels do not agree. Matthew, Mark, and Luke knew nothing of the atonement, nothing of salvation by faith. They knew only the gospel of good deeds, of charity. They teach that if we forgive others, God will forgive us. With this, the Gospel of John does not agree. In that gospel, we are taught that we must believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, that we must be born again, that we must drink the blood and eat the flesh of Christ. In this gospel, we find the doctrine of the atonement and that Christ died for us and suffered in our place. This gospel is utterly at variance with the other three. If the other three are true, the Gospel of John is false. If the Gospel of John was written by an inspired man, the writers of the other three were uninspired. From this there is no possible escape. The four cannot be true. It is evident that there are many interpolations in the four Gospels. For instance, in the 28th chapter of Matthew is an account to the effect that the soldiers at the tomb of Christ were bribed to say that the disciples of Jesus stole away his body while they, the soldiers, slept. Well, this is clearly an interpolation. It is a break in the narrative. The 10th verse should be followed by the 16th. The 10th verse is as follows. Then Jesus said unto them, Be not afraid. Go, tell my brethren that they go unto Galilee, and there shall they see me. The 16th verse, Then the 11 disciples went away unto Galilee into a mountain where Jesus had appointed them. The story about the soldiers contained in the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th verses is an interpolation, an afterthought, long after. The 15th verse demonstrates this. 15th verse, So they took the money and did as they were taught, and this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Certainly this account was not in the original gospel, and certainly the 15th verse was not written by a Jew. No Jew could have written this. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Mark, John, and Luke never heard that the soldiers had been bribed by the priests, or if they had, did not think it worthwhile recording. So the accounts of the ascension of Jesus Christ in Mark and Luke are interpolations. Matthew says nothing about the ascension. Certainly there never was a greater miracle, and yet Matthew, who was present, who saw the Lord rise, ascend, and disappear, did not think it worth mentioning. On the other hand, the last words of Christ according to Matthew contradict the ascension. Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. John, who was present, if Christ really ascended, says not one word on the subject. As to the ascension, the Gospels do not agree. Mark gives the last conversation that Christ had with his disciples as follows. Go ye into all the world, and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils. They shall speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents. And if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. So then, after the Lord had spoken unto them, he was received up into heaven and sat on the right hand of God. Is it possible that this description was written by one who witnessed this miracle? This miracle is described by Luke as follows. And it came to pass, while he blessed them, he was parted from them and carried up into heaven. Brevity is the soul of wit. In the Acts we are told that, when he had spoken, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. Neither Luke, nor Matthew, nor John, nor the writer of the Acts heard one word of the conversation attributed to Christ by Mark. The fact is that the ascension of Christ was not claimed by his disciples. At first, Christ was a man, nothing more. Mary was his mother, Joseph his father. The genealogy of his father Joseph was given to show that he was of the blood of David. Then the claim was made that he was the Son of God, and that his mother was a virgin, and that she remained a virgin until her death. Then the claim was made that Christ rose from the dead and ascended bodily to heaven. It required many years for these absurdities to take possession of the minds of men. If Christ rose from the dead, why did he not appear to his enemies? Why did he not call on Caiaphas the high priest? Why did he not make another triumphal entry into Jerusalem? If he really ascended, why did he not do so in public, in the presence of his persecutors? Why should this, the greatest of miracles, be done in secret, in a corner? It was a miracle that could have been seen by a vast multitude, a miracle that could not be simulated, one that would have convinced hundreds of thousands. After the story of the resurrection, the ascension became a necessity. They had to dispose of the body. So there are many other interpolations in the Gospels and epistles. Again I ask, is the New Testament true? Does anybody now believe that at the birth of Christ there was a celestial greeting, that a star led the wise men of the east, that Herod slew the babes of Bethlehem of 2 years old and under? The Gospels are filled with accounts of miracles. Were they ever performed? Matthew gives the particulars of about 22 miracles, Mark of about 19, Luke of about 18, and John of about 7. According to the Gospels, Christ healed diseases, cast out devils, rebuked the sea, cured the blind, fed multitudes with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, walked on the sea, cursed a fig tree, turned water into wine, and raised the dead. Matthew is the only one that tells about the star and the wise men, the only one that tells about the murder of babes. John is the only one who says anything about the resurrection of Lazarus, and Luke is the only one giving an account of the rising from the dead, the widow of Nain's son. How is it possible to substantiate these miracles? The Jews among whom they were said to have been performed did not believe them. The diseased, the palsied, the leprous, the blind who were cured did not become followers of Christ. Those that were raised from the dead were never heard of again. Does any intelligent man believe in the existence of devils? The writer of 3 of the Gospels certainly did. John says nothing about Christ having cast out devils, but Matthew, Mark, and Luke give many instances. Does any natural man now believe that Christ cast out devils? If his disciples said he did, they were mistaken. If Christ said he did, he was insane or an impostor. If the accounts of casting out devils are false, then the writers were ignorant or dishonest. If they wrote through ignorance, then they were not inspired. If they wrote what they knew to be false, they were not inspired. If what they wrote is untrue, whether they knew it or not, they were not inspired. At that time it was believed that palsy, epilepsy, deafness, insanity, and many other diseases were caused by devils, that devils took possession of and lived in the bodies of men and women. Christ believed this, taught this belief to others, and pretended to cure diseases by casting devils out of the sick and insane. We know now, if we know anything, that diseases are not caused by the presence of devils. We know, if we know anything, that devils do not reside in the bodies of men. If Christ said and did what the writers of the 3 Gospels say he said and did, then Christ was mistaken. If he was mistaken, certainly he was not God. And if he was mistaken, certainly he was not inspired. Is it a fact that the devil tried to bribe Christ? Is it a fact that the devil carried Christ to the top of the temple and tried to induce him to leap to the ground? How can these miracles be established? The principles have written nothing. Christ has written nothing, and the devil has remained silent. How can we know that the devil tried to bribe Christ? Who wrote the account? We do not know. How did the writer get his information? We do not know. Somebody, some 1,700 years ago, said that the devil tried to bribe God, that the devil carried God to the top of the temple and tried to induce him to leap to the earth, and that God was intellectually too keen for the devil. This is all the evidence we have. Is there anything in the literature of the world more perfectly idiotic? Intelligent people no longer believe in witches, wizards, spooks, and devils, and they are perfectly satisfied that every word in the New Testament about casting out devils is utterly false. Can we believe that Christ raised the dead? A widow living in Nain is following the body of her son to the tomb. Christ halts the funeral procession and raises the young man from the dead and gives him back to the arms of his mother. This young man disappears. He's never heard of again. No one takes the slightest interest in the man who returned from the realm of death. Luke is the only one who tells the story. Maybe Matthew, Mark, and John never heard of it, or did not believe it, and so failed to record it. John says that Lazarus was raised from the dead. Matthew, Mark, and Luke say nothing about it. It was more wonderful than the raising of the widow's son. He had not been laid in the tomb for days. He was only on his way to the grave. But Lazarus was actually dead. He had begun to decay. Lazarus did not excite the least interest. No one asked him about the other world. No one inquired of him about their dead friends. When he died the second time, no one said, "He is not afraid. He has traveled that road twice and knows just where he's going." We do not believe in the miracles of Mohammed, and yet they are as well attested as this. We have no confidence in the miracles performed by Joseph Smith, and yet the evidence is far greater, far better. If a man should go about now, pretending to raise the dead, pretending to cast out devils, we would regard him as insane. What then can we say of Christ? If we wish to save his reputation, we are compelled to say that he never pretended to raise the dead, that he never claimed to have cast out devils. We must take the ground that these ignorant and impossible things were invented by zealous disciples who sought to deify their leader. In those ignorant days, these falsehoods added to the fame of Christ, but now they put his character in peril and belittle the authors of the Gospels. Can we now believe that water was changed into wine? John tells of this childish miracle and says that the other disciples were present, yet Matthew, Mark, and Luke say nothing about it. Take the miracle of the man cured by the pool of Bethesda. John says that an angel troubled the waters of the pool of Bethesda, and that whoever got into the pool first after the waters were troubled was healed. Does anybody now believe that an angel went into the pool and troubled the waters? Does anybody now think that the poor wretch who got in first was healed? Yet the author of the Gospel, according to John, believed and asserted these absurdities. If he was mistaken about that, he may have been about all the miracles he records. John is the only one who tells about this pool of Bethesda. Possibly the other disciples did not believe the story. How can we account for these pretended miracles? In the days of the disciples, and for many centuries after, the world was filled with the supernatural. Nearly everything that happened was regarded as miraculous. God was the immediate governor of the world. If the people were good, God sent seed time and harvest. But if they were bad, he sent flood and hail, frost and famine. If anything wonderful happened, it was exaggerated until it became a miracle, of the order of events. Of the unbroken and the unbreakable chain of causes and effects, the people had no knowledge and no thought. A miracle is the badge and brand of fraud. No miracle ever was performed. No intelligent, honest man ever pretended to perform a miracle, and never will. If Christ had wrought the miracles attributed to him, if he had cured the palsied and insane, if he had given hearing to the deaf, vision to the blind, if he had cleansed the leper with a word, and with a touch had given life and feeling to the withered limb, if he had given pulse and motion, warmth and thought to cold and breathless clay, if he had conquered death, and rescued from the grave its pallid prey, no word would have been uttered, no hand raised except in praise and honor. In his presence all heads would have been uncovered, all knees upon the ground. Is it not strange that at the trial of Christ no one was found to say a word in his favor? No man stood forth and said, "I was a leper, and this man cured me with a touch." No woman said, "I am the widow of Nain, and this is my son whom this man raised from the dead." No man said, "I was blind, and this man gave me sight." All silent.